Okay, Lucas, show us what you got.
Right. So I've got this, and not sure if I can. There we go. So this is a little Amazon purchase. It's an Airwalk, and initially when I picked it up, it said the Amazon listing said Chinese automatic watch, automatic movement, keep time accurately with no battery involved. All of that kind of broken pigeon English. And I was like, this is an automatic Chinese wristwatch for $17. And so
with free shipping.
Yeah, with free shipping. So I only paid, I think, $18.05 because of tax. But the watch arrived. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go wind it up. I pull it out of the box, and I pull out the watch. I open up the case, and there's a little red movement stopper in the crown. I'm like, that's weird. I guess that's just a procedure they follow for quartz watches. They're pressing the crown, and it starts ticking. So this was a misadvertised quartz watch. Everyone said automatic Chinese watch, and all the English reviews were like, cool watch, nice deal. And then the one review that I didn't look at, or actually that my computer didn't pull up because it was in Spanish, was like non est automatico or something like that. So that was the only clue, and I guess I didn't look into that. And I had my suspicions. I wasn't gonna assume that it was 100% gonna be automatic. I went to return it. Yeah, this watch, I tried to refund it. Or I tried to return it, and they said, "Okay, here's your $17. Just keep it. Don't bother turning it back in."
So you got a free quartz watch with a plastic case.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, it is a metal case here, and I thought it was plastic when I bought it, and when I pulled it out of the box, it's this weird plastic-coated metal case. Like when I opened it up and I looked at the movement, I scratched a little bit of the plating away inside the watch, and it's like a base. It's a base metal case underneath. With mineral crystal, very odd, but very cool. I'm not gonna lie, I like the way it looks. And then I have this one that I'm gonna wear today. Yeah, I have another watch coming, which is sort of like, it's similar. It has a similar second hand to Mondaine, I believe is how you pronounce the brand. Yeah, I'm gonna have to run off right about now. So
thanks for joining us.
Say goodbye, and I'll see you in October, maybe sooner.
Dan, you got anything new in your collection?
Yeah, I do. I actually got a new watch. Yeah, I can show you when it's time.
And I'll open it. Okay.
Okay, that's on the background. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your smiling face is in the way, but
well,
that's one way to share it.
The picture
is the background. Okay.
Move your head to one side. We can't see the jewel.
The picture, for some reason or other, has been cropped.
What is that?
It's been cropped in the. In other words, it's a whole picture, but I don't know why it doesn't fit in the frame.
Well, it's because of the background. So if you go to your go outside of Zoom and go to your picture files, and if you see, do you have a slideshow or preview program that you can bring up that will allow them all to come up?
I'd have to look into that and see. Let me just tell you
how do you look at them?
Dave, you're a realtor. You're supposed to do all this stuff day in and day out.
I don't do that type of thing very often. So this is the back of an English ivory watch that I restored. And the whole thing was falling apart. But the main thing that this shows is this ivory window was missing right there. And I had some old small chess pieces. And so I was able to take a pawn and take the disc off the pawn and cut the hole larger, cut a hole in it here, put a silver knob in it and trim down the outside to make a key door for it.
So that's a winding cover.
That's where you wind it, yeah. If you move it to here, then you've got the winding arbor. And this is some type of garnet that was set in here. To make a long story short, this is an English watch that was recased probably in the 1880s. And when the whaling fleets were in full operation, they used whale's teeth, which are pretty similar to ivory for everything. And they made all kinds of things out of ivory because there was a lot of time that the people at sea had nothing to do I mean, they'd be sitting around. They'd, be looking for whales and stuff. And so many of them made all kinds of ivory things. This is the only watch case that I've ever seen made for that. Just as a side note, the Mystic Museum in Mystic, Connecticut has the largest scrimshaw collection in the world, and that's all ivory objects made by sailors at sea, and they were from all kinds of things, ivory, um, pie crust cutters and women's mirrors and even ship models, and or they just carved the teeth into a figure or something like that, whale's teeth. And it's very highly sought after, quite rare. And as you can see by this case, ivory really shrinks and stuff like that. The good news was that this case had moved enough where the keyhole did not line up with the movement, and I was able to get this back off. It wasn't glued on well enough, and turn it around just a little bit, so the keyhole then wound up right in the hole where it should be with the back of the case.
So is this a watch you're restoring for a client?
No, it's mine. I've had it for about 40 years, and it was a horrendous job. I had to fit the pendant, redo the pendant, which was broken, fit it to the case. I had to make a new hinge for the movement because that was not only broken, but one of the screws was broken down inside the ivory case here, which was the only way I could finally get that out from the ivory case was using actually a very, very small diamond burr, because the burr won't follow anything. In other words, if you run it straight down, it'll grind out whatever is there. So it won't wander off the steel into the ivory, giving you a big hole and crooked and everything else. And it was a really big job, but it turned out very well. And I wish I could show you the rest of it, but at this point, I think I'd have to go through too much stuff to get there.
So Dan, why don't you show us what you got?
Thanks.
Yeah, one thing I was curious about that ivory. I guess he's gone.
Well, he'll be back. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ban on selling ivory, right? Like unless it's 100 years old or more.
Yeah,
so
I was going to ask about that, because there is the ivory.
Yeah, I think, if it's more than 100 years old, if you have records to show that it's more than 100 years old, that might be an exception. But I was just wondering about that.
All right.
So what do you know about the ivory sales, Dave? Legality
Tim, you need to enable sharing.
It should be.
People are very leery of it. It's the basic, I think the cutoff thing is 1987, and anything that was made prior to that is legal. But so if you go through customs and stuff, they might not see it that way, but that is actually the legal basis on it.
Okay.
In a case like this.
Okay, I've just I've switched it to one person sharing it.
Okay, that changed something. Whatever you did made a difference.
Okay, it says Dan has started screen sharing.
So this is a new watch, well, new for me, that I got from someone who picked it at an estate sale in Oklahoma. It's a galley flying officer, although this particular model doesn't have flying officer on the dial. So, it's an interesting chronograph. I don't know if you can see, it has all these names of cities around the world.
It's like a world time.
It's like a world timer chronograph. Yeah. And Harry Truman famously wore one of these, although, obviously that was an older one. This is from the 60s. And it has just a Landeron movement in it. The older ones had Venus movements in it. But style was pretty similar. So it's got really, these interesting city names. Some of them have very sort of weird, obscure spellings. But yeah, there's two rows of cities. I don't know, maybe I can blow this up a little. I don't know if it'll focus. How's that? Oh, that worked.
Yeah, it focused nicely.
Can you see that pretty well?
Yeah.
Singapore.
Yeah, Singapore, New York,
Berlin,
Buenos Aires, Shanghai. You go around. There's like two rows for each time zone, and it just sort of goes around. So it's kind of a fun watch. It's an interesting watch. These have become Baghdad. There's that weird misspelling. It's sort of famous, actually. Alaska, London, Paris. Yeah, so it just kind of goes around. This guy it's running, as you can see, but not running very well. The sweep hand actually doesn't like to stop. So there's something wrong with the chronograph functions, but it also runs quite slow. It really needs to be completely gone through. And what else can I say about it? It's a nice size. It's 36.5 millimeters, something very nice size to wear. It's got a screw-on back. This one's all original except for the sweep hand. Either the sweep hand is not original or it's broken, because it should have a little spade tail on the end of it.
Yeah.
So I think I have a hand that'll be close to original. It'll look a lot better than it currently does.
And I certainly have a bunch of sweep hands too that I can look through.
All right. Well, I might, maybe we can talk offline about that. Yeah, it needs to be about 13 millimeters from the center post to the tip, and it should have one of those spade-shaped tails. I could show you what they look like. The only last piece of interesting tidbit about this is it was, one of these watches given to someone for 20 years of service to his employer, which was interesting. So this was to Jack Barrett, and this 20 years of service from 1947 and 1967. And it was, since I knew the estate sale that it came from in this specific town in Oklahoma, I was able to find out who he was. And so he founded a bank, sort of a state savings and loan bank in his town in Oklahoma when he returned from the Second World War, and he continued as an aviator. But he was a fighter pilot in World War II. And I found this little history of him. Fighter pilot, World War II, won these awards. He, this wasn't a watch that he had at the time. This was a watch that he got in the 60s. But I just thought it was nice to be able to, find some information about the person this was given to, even though it was later in his life. And, it's sort of very apropos for him, since he was a fighter pilot, that he was given this watch that has the model name Flying Officer, Galley Flying Officer watch. So,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
That was fun.
I actually visited the Galley booth at Basel World in 2016, and they have reissued that watch.
Yeah.
And they were doing a version of it for the NAWCC museum as a fundraiser. They were trying to do that, but it wasn't handled very well, and I couldn't find any real information on it. And they wanted a lot of money for it. It was like $30,000 or $40,000, and it's like, that's a really lot of money for something.
I think this is going to clean up well. You can see the dial is still really nice and glossy.
Yeah, the dial's in great shape.
Is in really nice shape. It just really needs, to be cleaned up, and obviously a new crystal. But yeah, it looks like, you know, he cared for it reasonably well. It's always nice to get something right from an estate. So
So is that something you found on eBay, or was it?
no, I mean, I know a person who picks estates,
Okay.
and so sometimes he'll, um, you know, 19 times out of 20, you know, he contacts me and just asks me about a watch. Like he'll, you know, like he'll send me a photo from an estate sale listing, which is like some terrible out of focus pixelated photo, and say, what is this watch? Do you recognize it? You know, how much is it worth? You know, and so I help him as best I can. And then I help him put values on things that he buys. And then, you know, occasionally he'll, you know, if it's something I'm interested in, he'll sell it to me. And
Cool.
so
Yeah.
that's it's just like a network, I guess, type of a thing.
Yeah, that's nice. It's a better way
Well,
to
I mean,
do
it's
it.
hard, you know, how do you get decent watches these days? You know, everybody's looking at eBay. You're not gonna.
Yeah, you're not going to get any deals on eBay, and you're going to be
No,
paying taxes on it, which
not usually.
is kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's right. And did you hear about the latest thing that they're doing on eBay?
No.
If you sell or buy a watch that's for more than $2,000, it undergoes a mandatory authentication process. So the seller ships it to their authenticator. They go through it and authenticate it and put it in a fancy box and ship it to the buyer. And if they can't authenticate it, they send it back to you and they cancel the sale. And if they determine that it's counterfeit, they confiscate it.
Is this just for wristwatches?
That's right. It's just for wristwatches, and it's only
yeah.
on US eBay site,
Yeah.
at least for now. And it seems like they're still phasing it in. Like not every single watch for sale over $2,000 is part of this program yet. I think maybe they're still ramping up. So I don't know how they're doing it, maybe as a bit of a pilot program, but it's in place. I see it going on.
I had heard about it. I haven't, you know, I've got an eBay store that I pay $20 a month for, and I haven't sold anything on it for 6 months now. And I'm beginning to think now that I probably will cancel it. I don't see.
Yeah, I think as a seller, it's kind of not very appealing. I mean, you know, I think I can understand how buyers might like the idea. And honestly, for newer watches, you know, if someone's buying like a Rolex Submariner from 2005 and they want to know that it's authentic, you know, I could see that, you know, I could see where they're coming from on that, as opposed to buying, you know, like to avoid having fakes. But, you know, 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old watches, I worry about who they're using to do this authentication. Are they really going to have the knowledge? You know, or are they just going to say, oh, I can't authenticate it and send it back?
Yeah, well, that's.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm worrying about nothing. Maybe it'll be fine.
Well, yeah.
I got one other thing. It's not a watch, but I got sort of an interesting thing. So I've shown this before. I have a Mito multi-center chrono. This is one of these center chronographs, right? So, you know, Longines and, you know, Patek actually made these where they, you know, instead of having subdials, it's a chronograph that has a sweep hand, and then it's got this other hand that's a minute counter.
Yep.
Like, so in this case, you can see the sweep hand is moving. It's hard to see. It's a little purplish.
Yeah.
And then there's that red hand, which is, you know, is actually the minute counter hand, which is up at like, you know, 54 or something. And then hour and minute hands are there. They're very dark. The radium is turned really dark, so it's a little hard to see them. But that's the Mito multi-center chrono, and it was, you know, it's also got these really nice fluted pushers, which is sort of a nice sort of stylish thing. But you know, the ads for these were funny because they advertised it as the chronograph that looks like a elegant wristwatch. So it was kind of like, you know, saying, oh, who wants all those busy subdials on the watch? Those chronographs are so ugly. Don't you want a chronograph that looks like a wristwatch? So I've had this for a while, but I never really knew what to put on it in terms of a bracelet or a strap. And I tried different things and I was never really happy. And then I was browsing around and I found this old advertisement that showed this multi-center chrono, and I guess this is it's in Spanish, this advertisement, and you can see it's on one of these ladder bracelets that you know, people know is the brand name is Bond Clip. You know, they were often put on these RAF military watches. I don't know if people are familiar with these bracelets. And,
I'm not,
so then I dug in a little more and I found out that they were sold on these, but not the Bond Clip brand. They actually have Mito branded bracelets, which are probably impossible to find. But I kind of wanted, it kind of piqued my interest. So I was able to pick up one of the Bond Clips. And so, you know, here it is. I mean, you might be able to see if I can get it in the lighting correctly. Yeah, the Bond Clip brand.
Yep.
And it's kind of an interesting style. You can see how it works. It you know, there are three. There's a fixed part, and then there's this other part that goes through that loop that you can kind of
you pull on it
up.
Yep.
And then there's a clasp that you can you know, kind of put it through any one of these links and clip it on. And it's very, very comfortable bracelet. And the end links are open. So I don't know if you can see. I don't know if that's showing up very well. So yeah, you can see the spring bar inside there. So there's like the end links don't wrap around. They actually have an opening. So they can be slipped over the lug bars on a fixed bar military watch. And what the RAF did, they put these on a lot of British military watches and then they crimped it closed once they slipped it on. So it was sort of meant to be permanently installed on RAF military watches, like those 6B watches. And so, you know, sometimes you find these, they're a little bit messed up because people had to pry them open. This watch doesn't have fixed lug bars, so I didn't mess around with it. I just installed it like a regular bracelet, but these can be used for fixed lug or fixed bar old watches. A lot of, I mean, they're not obviously there's non-military watches like that too, but these just happen to be well known for being installed on British military watches. So
is that bracelet hard to find?
You know, so the Bond Clip brand, which is the one that the British military used, have become pretty desirable and hard to find, but there are many imitations, not modern. I mean, there were contemporary, there are other companies that made basically the identical style bracelet contemporaneous with Bond Clip, and those are not hard to find at all. They're quite inexpensive. The Bond Clip ones are hard to find and they become desirable, especially the ones with the wider end links, because a lot of them have been filed down to fit like 16 millimeter lugs, and those are not as, you know, desirable. And of course, I'll be keeping my eye open to find a Mito branded one, maybe for the rest of my life. But but if I find one of those, that'll probably be quite expensive because they're not easy to find at all. The Mito brand is actually, yeah, it's kind of in a funny spot on the bracelet, but yeah, I thought that was kind of cool and I like it. I actually like the way it looks, and it's very, very comfortable, flexible bracelet. I think it's very, very well suited for military watches. You know, Tim, if you have some military watch that you'd want to put one on, you can get one of the off-brand ones pretty cheap to try it out.
Yeah, that's good to know. The center accumulator, minute accumulator, is still produced by Frederick Paget, however you pronounce
Oh,
it.
okay. They
You
make
know,
so
their
they have
own.
a movement, or they make the watch, the whole watch.
Well, they make the whole watch and movement. They're primarily they're owned by Breguet, and Breguet uses them on their Type
Oh, okay.
21. So it's used on that, and then Elaine Silverstein used it on some of his
Okay.
chronograph watches as well.
This is a modified Valjoux chronograph movement. In this one, you know, they call it a Mito 16,000 or something like that, but it's really a modified Valjoux movement. These watches are nice. I like them. They also have a white dial version. They're kind of fun and appealing, but they often get scavenged for these pusher caps because, you know, so this is in a Borgel casemaker case, and so as I said, Patek made a very similar model with the same pushers and a very similar case, and so, you know, those are so incredibly desirable that if the pusher caps get worn, these get, you know, bought as parts watches.
The caps are worth more than the whole watch, you know, for
yeah,
a
well,
Patek
who
collector.
knows? You know, that could be. It can get that way. I mean, especially if the condition of the rest of the watch is less than, you know, perfect. That definitely probably gets to be the case. Yeah. So that's all I had.
Oh, that's fun. The ads, like you've got there, I get Europa Star emails. I subscribed to the magazine once, and they have various levels of subscription. And if you want to pay $450 a year, you can access their records. They have all of their magazines digitized, and they go back. It's the oldest watch magazine still in existence, and it goes back, you know, 60, 70 years, and you can access all of the magazine content and all of the old ads and stuff.
Oh, that's nice.
And I thought about maybe getting a subscription for, you know, at least some period of time so you could access all of that stuff. So it'd be
old
kind of
advertising and catalogs are incredibly helpful to do research. I mean, it's like there's no substitute for. I mean, you know, the only downside is that sometimes these, like the artwork and the old advertising, is not actually accurate. You know, they're not photographs. They, you know, somebody drew it. Yep. So sometimes you'll find some things that aren't quite right, but yeah, it's really, I find myself looking for advertising a lot. I mean, here, you know, I learned something from it. Other times, maybe I'm just doing it for fun, but sometimes they're incredibly helpful to find, you know, like if you wanted to find the right style hand or crown, like crowns. I'm looking at crowns a lot, you know.
Yeah. Yes, that's interesting. So, Mike, you're muted there, but you got anything new in your world?
No, I've been doing some work with an old Waltham car clock, which has kind of been different for me, but nothing. One thing I might ask is you know, I've done a lot more clock work than I have watch work. I've got an Elgin 15 jewel pocket watch, which my sister sent me. It's been in the family, I guess, but it's missing the crown and the stem. And I don't know, I just might ask the question as to how one would go about trying to find, you know, a crown and a stem to, you know, to match that watch.
Well, it's all dependent upon the case. It's, you know, in the size, but, you know, if it's like most Elgin pocket watches and such, it's got that little square thing that stays in the case, and there's a threaded sleeve that retains it in the case, and also has the snap thing. And so the length of the pendant and the diameter of the pendant determines the kind of sleeve you're going to have. I'm guessing that's a 12 size, maybe?
Yeah,
yes.
Looks like a 12 size, yeah.
I mean, I've got a number of Elgin cases and such. I might, you know, be able to source something for you. Is that something you're going to keep for yourself, or does your sister want
I
it
think
back?
No, I keep it. I don't get involved in selling things. So it's just more of a hobby for me. And this evidently has been in the family for a long time. It's got the original box and everything that the watch came in. So I'm just kind of looking at, to make it functional again.
Yeah. How far back does it go? When was it from?
I think it's, I looked it up as, I think it's 1940.
Oh, okay.
So it's not
So it's not super old. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So then in the 40s, they might have gone to the negative detent or whatever they call it, the things where it's got a captive mort stem like the Swiss used.
Can you show it?
If you can pop open the back and show us the movement, that would be helpful. I mean, I've got a ton of 12 size stuff because I had a conversion case. Okay, that is, okay, that's, yeah, so that's, okay, so that's going to use the stem and sleeve
Right.
type of thing. You can also send that to Vortic Watches in Fort Collins and have it converted into a wristwatch, and that would solve the crown problem because they'll make a crown and stem, to fit their watch system. So,
What's the status of that lawsuit with Vortec?
I haven't heard any resolution yet. I'm on the Vortic mailing list, and RT sent a note out saying that he's going to actually be in Denver. There's a street fair going on this weekend with vendors, and so he's going to be there Saturday, peddling his watches. But I haven't heard any news on.
There's one of the brands where they use the dials from is suing them.
The Swatch group sued him, Hamilton specifically, and so they were.
Oh yeah, okay.
He was. They were. They
Rings a bell,
kind of.
actually,
They
yeah.
kind of standardized on 4 brands: Waltham, Illinois, Elgin, and Hamilton. And they call the Hamilton version the Lancaster because that's where Hamilton, I think, was headquartered, and the Swatch group, specifically the Hamilton group, said, well, you're selling a wristwatch with the Hamilton name on it, and we have to protect our intellectual property, because if we don't protect our intellectual property, other people might, take advantage of us. So he had to go to the Southern District Court in New York, and they had lawyers, and he pleaded his own case, and is just in front of the judge, and the judge is supposed to have ruled by now, but they haven't. And the whole process of that, I think. So no news, but hopefully something will come up soon.
Pocket watch looks like it's in a nice case. I mean, I don't think it needs to be recased.
No, it's nice to have the original case and the original box, and that's a small diameter sleeve and a short stem, and I might have a near identical case that I can pull that stuff out of. Because I'm not really, if I have 12 size wristwatch movements, I'm more going to put them into a wristwatch conversion unless it's got a really special case. And in the situation of Elgin and Waltham and Illinois, you often got the movement in the case separately, or you could buy the movement grade, and then you'd select the case that you liked, and they'd drop right in. That was the advantage of their stem setup. Is pretty cool in that respect.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, Tim. Maybe when we go back to live meetings, I'll bring it down and show it to you. Thank you.
Well, I'll go ahead and share a screen of a couple of my acquisitions. So I got one of these little Bulova military watches.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the ordnance department. It's a brass case. I didn't take a picture of the top side, unfortunately, but it's got a 10 AK manual wind movement. It's sort of like their navigation watch. And then I picked up this thing, and this brand is called REC, R-E-C, and it's a couple Danish guys, designers. And this thing the dial is made out of scrap metal from a wrecked Porsche 911. So they call it a P901, and it turns out that Porsche originally was going to call the 911 the 901, but it turns out that Ferrari owns the trademarks for all car numbers with a 0 in the middle of the 3 digits.
Oh, wow.
So they couldn't call it a 901, so they had to call it a 911. But this company was started in 2014. It's got a Matoya, I think I'm pronouncing it wrong, Japanese movement, and a 28 jewel movement with a triple calendar function. Comes in this metal tin, and the backside looks like the wheel of a
Oh, yeah,
Porsche.
it's like a steering wheel.
And,
Yeah.
Interesting.
and they still sell them. They're like $1,600 on the website. 3 versions, comes full carry case with these straps that have a quick release spring bar on them, and kind of the story behind, and it has the VIN number and the year of the car that the metal came from. I can only imagine that the metal is like came from the muffler or something.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, where it, like, how could you tell that it came from a wrecked car?
Yeah, it's you're obviously
Right.
trusting them a little bit.
It's like that, like, moon rock dial, like.
Yeah, moon dust or whatever. Yeah. And then I
Yeah.
picked up one of these Omega Mark II Speedmaster racings, and these are the
The racing dial. Yeah.
same era as the Flightmaster. So the hands are the same. It's the same base movement, which is the Omega called it an 861 in the Speedmaster, but it's actually a Lamagna, like a 1743 or something, and it's got the Sea Monster on the back. And this one came with the wrong bracelet on it. It had an aftermarket bracelet, so I put on a bracelet that's not quite correct, but it's pretty good for the watch.
I love that dial. Those racing dials are really nice looking.
I really prefer, like that dial quite a bit as well, and just that checkerboard pattern, I guess. And I like the red band on it, and there's different color versions of that.
Yeah, and they used, there were two versions of the Speedmaster Professional, the more conventional Speedmaster that had those dials, in limited edition, like one, from like 50 years ago that are sort of untouchable, like $50,000 or something. And then there was a Japanese release in the early 2000s. Those are really, I really like those dials. Those are very cool.
Interesting.
Looking.
I was trying to, I had a couple other, one other watch to show, but I didn't put it in the, it's a little Racine. Small case, but it's in a kind of this strange faceted Borgle case.
Yeah.
And it's got the serial numbers between the lugs, and I can't see it, but it's a Gallet movement there, kind of a crappy picture, and so that's the case with the FB logo on it. So
how does the case open? Oh, is it just?
It's a screw back.
Oh, it's a screw back. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a screw down case, and it also has the mu metal cap on it or whatever, to give it some anti-magnetic properties. Sorry about the picture not being
that's interesting that
good.
You hear about that Gallet connection with Racine.
Yeah, with Racine, I don't quite remember all the details of that. And then when Racine, I don't know, did the guys split out or something, and they had to, just did the anagram on Racine and turned it into Anacar.
Anacar, it's backwards, Racine backwards, actually.
So that's my watches at the time. Those the Rec and the Omega Mark II came from Jones and Horan out of New Hampshire again. One of their weekly every 2-week auctions.
So that Rec was new in its box, but you didn't buy it new. You bought it at an auction, and someone
Yeah, I
bought
bought
and
it.
sold it.
Yeah, it was from somebody's collection. It's used. You can still buy it new. The list
Oh,
price
okay.
on them is $1,600,
Yeah.
so I paid like $850 for it. And again, with Jones and Haroon, with their auctions, they don't charge sales tax shipping on this kind of stuff, and there's no buyer's fees. And they take PayPal on these weekly, every 2-week auctions. So they run them for 10 days. Is the auctions go for 10 days and close on Thursdays. So they mostly a lot of pocket watches, and they're mostly known as kind of estate brokers. And so this either came from somebody who passed away or somebody who's paring down their collection. Well, gentlemen, what else?
I promise to look into screen sharing.
Okay,
Okay.
so yeah, so actually I'll do, let me do one other screen share. So this is a picture of the Budweiser plant in Fort Collins, I think
Jeez.
Saturday, when the fires, Saturday or
Yeah.
Sunday, when the fires were the
Right.
worst.
Before the
There,
weather.
kind of an apocalyptic scene there.
Yeah, it's a very interesting shot.
But that's looking at from Windsor across the farm fields at the Budweiser plant north of Fort Collins.
Wow. Yeah, we don't get sunsets like that too often.
Nope. Okay,
Right.
I can call an end to this if nobody else has anything else to share.
I
Mike,
don't have anything else.
Mike, you done?
I'm done. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
I'm done.
Okay.
Like I said, I'll get my my act in order next
Okay.
time.
You can always
There's-
save a PowerPoint presentation as a PDF if you want. And then you can just display it as a PDF. Is another
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that would work. So,
Interesting.
so,
Yep.
That makes it more portable.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. As a PDF, it works the same.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of it's just flip through slides, but you're displaying it in using like a Acrobat viewer
Yeah.
instead of
Right.
and it's not editable. It's like any PDF
Right.
file, but you're displaying slides.
Right.
So it's a nice way to send a presentation to someone if you don't really want them to be able to
Right.
own it and mess around with it very easily. If you just want to have someone be able to.
Well, that's the advantage
take
of
a look at
PDF is you can't alter it or do anything with it.
Not too easily anyway. Yeah.
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 Right.
With PowerPoint, you work hard to get the formatting just right, and then someone is on a Mac instead of on a Windows machine or a different version
Right,
of PowerPoint,
right.
and it looks different. And so, but if you save it as a PDF,
Right.
it's just going to look exactly like what you expected.
Yeah. It's
Look
frozen
like
in time.
Usually the file size is a bit smaller with PDF
Yeah,
as well. If you have
yeah.
a lot of graphic, if you have movies and stuff, obviously those won't get converted.
and when you do want to do the screen sharing, David, what you want to do is have that like PDF file already up in a PDF viewer, in another window. And so when you go to screen sharing, the screen sharing options will then ask you
Oh,
which application you want
Oh.
to use. Anyway, I can call the
Yeah.
splits. So,
He's got a call. Yeah.
we'll see you guys later.
my lunch shortly.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank
Tim.
you,
Take
Tim.
care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
We'll
Bye.
do it again in another few weeks.
Sounds good.
Okay, take care, David.
Yep. You too.
We're
Thanks for
signing
doing it.
off. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.